say, this is Winkie Kelsey. I'm here at the AVA Gallery, 11 Bank Street in Lebanon, New Hampshire. And Winkie has been teaching in this studio and working as an artist for a good long time.
A long time.
How long have you been in this studio here at AVA?
After they renovated the place, I took over this. This was my studio. And I thought, this is a bit much with the cost, so my ex-students became my ex-partners, and Andrea is one of them. Mm-hmm. And you'll see her work in the next room, I hope. And then these are students left over from the weekend that didn't quite finish their work for the show. So they're back here.
Oh, good.
The guys.
We're going to focus on this room to begin with, but I want to give a bit of a context to Winkie and her work. The exhibition, which we'll see soon in the main gallery here, just opposite this studio, has work of Winkie's from 1954 to the present, and it's quite an amazing retrospective. And when I came in earlier, she was showing a piece which is in this show, which has also been in one of the largest sculpture shows in the United States. Would you tell us about that?
It is the best layout because it's a huge area, like 2 football fields. And 1 football field has the 2 tents, A to K and then KL to Z. The artists, you're all juried in, 7 pieces, several slides. Your background, 1 piece has to go to their auction to help pull this thing off. And then at night, this is Colorado, only Colorados do this, they have enormous pig roast for you and your friends and your family. Every person that participates has an opportunity to stay at a local house. They put up all the artists free.
Oh, what a great idea. Very different than what we're doing here right now, but maybe someday Ava could have a major stone carving show that you could help curate. I know.
That would be huge.
It would. Well, I like thinking of your work moving around the country and having been made in many places.
Yeah, and how I got into this is, in the beginning, these lovely cupcakes, and they're very well known in Colorado. Jeannie Renshart Adcock, she died of cancer of the lung and breast. You have to be careful. And her husband just died, and so all these wonderful books you get on sculpture, as in, it doesn't have has been honoring him in the back cover of the newest
for all the work
editions,
they've done.
This book, however, is magnificent magazine. If you want to know up-to-date sculpture and what's going on, it's gorgeous.
This is Stuart. He was one of our students over the weekend. We did the Saturday and Sunday workshop, and Stuart wasn't quite finished with his piece, so he joined us again this morning.
Oh, I appreciate the opportunity.
He's working on a piece of peach alabaster, and he's having great luck with it.
And he has the mask on because one of the big rules in this studio is safety first.
Absolutely.
So you don't know what anybody looks like.
Yeah, it's a good idea to keep your eyes protected and your lungs protected with stone dust. Especially, we had a pretty large class, 9 people carving. It creates quite a bit of dust.
That's a lot. Wow. And what is this you're working on?
This is an owl. I'm working from this photograph here that was provided by the workshop, and I'm quite a novice, but I'm attempting to make this look like that.
We often wet the stone so you can really see the color of it come up. This is a orange alabaster that I get out west, and it's just a really nice stone for novice students, that have never carved stone. It's very instant gratification. They can get a nice little piece out of it. It's slightly harder than soapstone, but it polishes up beautifully, and it's a nice stone for students.
So how long would that take for you to make?
It's been 8-9 hours so far, and there'll be some polishing, I understand, that follows, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple students that didn't quite finish, but out of 9, we had just about everybody finished.
These 2 guys were very, very cautious, and there's one out on the steps.
Yeah, he came back too, but 7 of them
We should
finished.
get him in here. Wet it to see what it's going to look like after it's polished. That's what it's going to look like.
Wow.
Isn't that gorgeous?
And what is your name?
Joe?
Is this your first piece, Joe?
Yeah.
This was everybody's first piece.
How exciting.
Here's the doctor.
There.
Serious crop.
The first thing you do is come up with an idea and a stone and try to get the two of them together. And it was an interesting group because we started at 9 o'clock on Saturday, and by 9:20, everyone had their idea and their stone, which is pretty much the hardest part of the process, and was working. Had gotten their tools, their stone, their idea, and everybody was at a station and working. And that was the first time that had ever happened quite so quickly. And with a group of 9, it was quite remarkable that they all had their idea. And one person knew exactly what he wanted to do when he walked in, but everybody else sort of had to think about it, do a little sketch, and then picking out a stone to go with their idea. It went very quickly for such a large group. It was quite remarkable.
So your work has really progressed into pretty major pieces, which we will see when we go into the gallery in a few moments. What are you working on now?
I'm working on a loom.
Pretty.
My animal efforts have been better than my non-animal efforts. Where did this come
Well,
from?
that's a good introduction to the show. Yeah, we could now go into the big gallery and take a look. This is really a piece that got a lot of attention at the opening. So do you want to discuss where the stone came from and the process and your idea behind this?
Sure. It's actually a piece of Vermont model, a gift from my teacher, Winkie, Kelsey. And I think he always was going to be an elephant. He was destined to be an elephant. The reason I say that is that Winkie gave it to me to be a swan. And somehow the swan just wouldn't come out of it elephant. Second aspect of it is that it is marble, and I had never done anything in marble. Marble is somewhat harder than both literally and figuratively than alabaster, which is what I was brought up with. In terms of why it was more challenging is that it's just harder to carve, and one gets frustrated when the chisel and the rasp don't do as much as you'd like them to do.
So how long would this process have been?
I started it a year ago.
Wow.
Then recognizing that this show was coming up, I worked a little more diligently to get it done. It's testimony to how inept inexperience can be, in the sense that it wasn't destined to be on this pedestal. It was supposed to sit on the edge of the pedestal.
Wow.
And when Winkie saw that design, she said, that isn't going to work. So her experience said 1,000 words, and it wouldn't work. When I set it on this flat surface, it wanted to fall off.
Wow.
And so I had a dilemma of how one would represent it. I consequently decided to put it on a pedestal, and to my surprise, it actually worked very well.
And Dick, can it turn? Can we turn it for
Sure.
the camera?
Yeah.
It's wonderful, even as an abstract form. So maybe this accident of having to look at it as a form, just with the right balance.
Well, accident is a good word in the sense that I make a lot of accidents, and they usually are to my delight. And actually that accident is too. I like the way it sits on the pedestal.
Yeah.
But the other accident was that it was going to be an elephant with big ears. But the accident of my inexperience was that there wasn't enough stone to have big ears, which of course is an African elephant. It suddenly became an Asian elephant with small ears. That's okay too.
What I like about this piece is it works no matter how I look at it from here. I don't know it's an elephant, but I love it. It's beautiful. Very good work.
Yeah, I must admit that this experience of art in sculpture is an accident in itself. But I think the reality is that these are your children, and and you grow to love them, and you're put in a dilemma if you have an idea of showing them, because ultimately showing them is to sell them.
Here's one you
Yeah.
lost. Let's
Exactly.
take a look at this. One of your children has a red dot.
That's
Oh,
right.
wow.
And both my wife and I like swoosh. Swoosh is a goose that married a swan, and I think it was about Joshua Reynolds, but I'm probably wrong, that a commentator said that all of his geese were swans, whereas all of the commentators' geese were just geese. Well, this is a swoosh because I'm not Joshua Reynolds. My wife and I love this piece, and we have second thoughts about it being sold, but it's a great compliment to have a friend buy it rather than my mother.
And this is alabaster,
This is alabaster.
so this wouldn't have taken quite so long. But
No, this didn't take long at all.
Dick, want to give us an idea of the mass of this stone? Just show us with your hands how large that piece was when you took it on.
Sure. Well, to some extent, the stone dictated what came out of it. That is to say, it was roughly this shape and size. And so I was able to see the swoosh in it. But one of the attractive features of stone, as opposed to a blank canvas, is that the swoosh had to come out of this shape. And the shape dictated what I call the interesting aspect of it. Everything is lopsided. His tail goes off to the left or the right. The neck comes out this way because there wasn't enough stone to have it symmetrical. And this wing is in and this one's out. All of those features to me make for an interesting piece. Technically, it probably would be not considered terribly good simply out of inexperience, but aesthetically to me, I think it's good because it does have these interesting shapes. There's not a symmetrical aspect of this swoosh, so much so that a very adept
I'm
artist.
going to disagree with what he just said. Technically, this is superb. The finish is absolutely lovely. The lines, the beautiful S lines that carry you around. So you always want to keep going around and say, oh, what's going to happen now? Oh, look, this goes up here and takes you here. So I want to go around here, and here's another beautiful S. Technically, this is perfection. I will now pull out.
Well, Winkie is uniquely supportive that way. And I think she's saying what I was saying in a more perhaps dogmatic way. What I'm alluding to is the interest of this piece isn't in its technology, it's in its shape. And,
Beauty.
And the shape creates the beauty. Now, I'm very pleased, but remember, most of that asymmetry was the stone itself. It wasn't.
Thank you to the stone.
Yeah, exactly. And
This is Andrea Barnell, who's also part of this wonderful group of Winkie students called the Uncommon Chiselers. And how long, I know you're really teaching now too, I could tell when I went into the studio. How long have you had that role?
I think we've done like 4 or 5 workshops, a couple years. We usually do 1 or 2 a year, one in the spring and one in the fall.
There's so many now doing this beautiful work, and it's very rare to see in most communities this number of stone carvers. It's very unusual, and I know it's a great part of our culture locally now.
Right.
Let's take a look at what you've been doing in preparation for this exhibit.
I think I've got 4 or 5 pieces here, a couple of prints. This is an alabaster sort of interactive piece. It's entitled The Sister Zilla. It represents my daughters. They were having some problems right now, and it was interesting as I had started both pieces separately. One was here at AVA and one was at my house, and I just woke up one night and decided that they should be put together and sort of make a piece. So they're just sort of abstract figures representing kind of a rough spot in a relationship, I guess.
Oh, wonderful. And what is this in your hand?
This is a little alabaster bird, very simple, just sort of slightly representational of a little round bird, and this was actually donated to the silent auction here at AVA, and this is again that same stone that we use a lot in the classes because it's just very easy to work with and nice for beginners. And like it was at the auction, and then somehow it wound up at Winkie's house, and she wanted to see
I love it
it
in your hand.
at the
Let's
show.
put it on its nest again. And I love it here all by itself against the white wall.
Yeah.
I also loved it in your hand because you get the sense of where it comes from your hand.
Yep. Well, they're nice little pieces.
And this is so different from everything in this gallery, which is loaded with beautiful work, and I love it. I love the reflection, the transparency of this mica, and the line, rather than being solid now, all these inner spaces, but very good sculpture. Explain what you were up to.
Well, mica fascinates me. It always has. Something about the texture of it and the way it peels and the reflection, and it's just such a natural raw material, such a beautiful natural raw material. I mean, it basically is a mineral just like the stone, but it's slightly different makeup. And one thing that I just was experimenting with the, I had pictures of it and I wanted to do something, sketches of what I wanted to do, and I just sort of started experimenting with different materials to hold the mica. And the copper seemed to do the best job. And what's interesting is that mica does not conduct heat or electricity. And copper is the conductor of heat and electricity. So you could actually run electricity into this copper and still touch this mica and not feel it. So that's what it's called, conductivity. So, but I do like the reflections. Like it looks as if the mica, the copper goes in directions where it's really just a mirror image, and it's just there's actually air trapped in beside, and the mica is called books, and these are called sheets, and there's actually air trapped in there from when it was formed, and you can actually see kind of iridescent colors in there
From that air.
from the air, the moire effect. Yeah.
What a beautiful medium to
Yeah,
play
it's
around with.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Keep it up.
Never seen anything like it.
It is one of a kind. Yeah, and some of them came from the actual same book. Like this and this came from the same book of mica, so there's some repetition in them. And I think this one might have too. No, but see, you can see this and this.
It has its own
Actually just
harmony
split.
because of how you divide it.
Yeah.
One of the exceptional things about this show is the first piece is 1954 and now it's 2009. And what I want to say about that is it's just wonderful to look at the career of a person who is now doing these incredible pieces of carved work and sharing by being a teacher, and you really get an idea of the sensitivity that led this artist to this place. Her drawings from nature, her woodcuts, all of your work, your paintings, lead us into the beautiful work in the stone. So we'll just take a moment to look at these, and what I love about this section of the wall is it's the 1954 section.
Well, I went to Smith because of their art courses, and to advance from the lower classes, you had to be tested in different mediums. So the whole year long, we did oil painting and drawing and these little wood prints. And then, to me, it was very depressing. So this little self-portrait, this happy thing, it's part of the trials in Smith trying to get in as a major, and by the time I was a senior, I had gone to 2 summer schools, Lafayette and Harvard, and completed courses. So the time I became a senior, we gravitated into all the drawings around the corner so I could study exclusively with Leonard Baskin. 1 year exclusive drawing and 1 year exclusive sculpture the same year. So I had a wonderful senior year.
And Winkie, don't you think there are many people from Smith who had this background with Leonard Baskin who've become pretty well-known artists, and some of them around here? He was a great teacher.
He was fabulous.
People often wonder, how do you get from a form to bronze? And how do you take concepts and develop a whole body of work that allows one to real expression in the world. And this is a very, very serious collection of pieces with great examples of how you go from here to here. So I'm going to let you describe so people understand this process.
I've moved a lot in my life, and we moved back to Connecticut, and I went to this little local bookstore, and Elie Wiesel was on the cover of Time magazine. And I said, "Who's he?" And they said, "Winkie, are you that stupid? He's a writer about the Holocaust." So I said, "Fine, let's start reading the books." And his books, luckily, are numbered, 1 to, I think, now 27. I got to about 10, and I said, "That's it. As a Christian, I need to honor this man and express it in art about how we felt about the Holocaust." And so probably the earliest pieces, this is Gabriel. And what Gabriel is doing is not wanting to hear the sounds of the Holocaust. Because in the little segment called, the second book is Mourning, he hears the cries of the children being thrown into the fire pits. So this is all Gabriel, and I started with this, and then I cast it in cast marble, the same cast, and then you can do bronze with it.
So the original is terracotta?
That's the original, and I do not like clay. It French fries your hands, they all crack and bleed. So after I got through this series, the last piece I did was a little child's head. And there's a big piece over there too. I'd had enough. I'd read a lot of his books and was in contact with this wonderful man. He's just so kind, and he has this piece, so.
Oh, he does?
Yeah, so I.
Oh, what a wonderful coming about that
Yeah,
happened.
he's just, and I tried to get in contact with him because he was coming to Greenwich to speak, and the rabbi said, "Oh, no, he doesn't talk to anybody." And I said, "Well, then give me his address." "Oh, we don't do that." I went back to the books. I looked in the books, guess what? He is a Mellon professor of literature at Harvard. I called Harvard and I said, "Does he have an office?" "Certainly." Into the office.
Oh, good for you.
And I said to the secretary, "I'm just trying to get in contact with him to thank him." "Oh, he lives in New York City. He lives right out by the UN. I said, "My husband's office is right by the UN. Boom.
Oh,
Got him.
what a great story, and what a beautiful body of work. Let's look at this other one which you gestured toward. It's a little larger.
Right here?
So Winkie, this began in clay as well? Same process?
Yes.
And it's called helping.
Helping, because it's the dove of peace, and it's always the wounded dove of peace in my work. Because peace was not happening.
Well, let's take a look at some of the works on canvas.
All right.
These paintings were a wonderful surprise for me, having known Winkie through a critique group and through having her work exhibited at Sculpture Fest in Woodstock. However, I'd never seen your drawings or paintings. And this is a beauty. What year was this? Do you know? Do you remember?
I'm not sure. It's when we moved to Fairleigh, Vermont, and this was on our property. And that's the later one before we moved. When did we move back? We moved back in probably the early 90s. So that's 90, and that might be 10 years later. But just being outside, and it's just the beauty of nature just overwhelms me. And this goes back to the drawings from Baskin. Again, look and see what you see.
Wonderful line, wonderful contrast, which we saw in your prints. This reminds me of early Kandinsky, this breaking up of the planes, almost mosaic-like.
Yeah, that was just fun.
No, it's a wonderful piece.
And that's what's so nice in oil. You can really experiment with it. With your emotions, too.
Yeah.
A lot of feeling in
Different
these. They don't feel
energies.
just decorative or just about the landscape. They have other feelings, like your other work.
Well, thank you. You're very generous.
Well, they do.
Yeah.
I feel it's related to the early expressionists, the German painters. Lyme Center. So any of the people that see this on TV that live in Lyme Center, they'll recognize the season at least, if not the field and the wall.
Well, when we moved back to, where were we moving to? To Fairleigh, no, it was before that. It was in the 60s. I had a friend who gave me an introduction to the dean of Dartmouth, and I said I wanted to do graduate courses. And they said, we don't do graduate courses, especially for women. And I said, but here's my portfolio, I'm showing you. They said, of course. So I was the only woman graduate student in the arts in 61.
wow.
So I have this wonderful designation of Virginia Kelsey Special 61 of Dartmouth. Ta-da!
Oh, cool. Who were some of the teachers you worked with?
Paul Sample.
Oh, good.
And Richard Wagner. And this, I was under Richard Wagner, who just said, go out with a bottle of wine in the countryside and go for it.
Oh, what a great piece of advice. Well, this is very
was
vibrant
fun.
and joyous.
I happened to see both towers being hit. And New York City, 9/11. And then went in that evening to one of the clubs in New York, and they had a screen that was 10 feet by 10 feet showing the whole thing again. I nearly died. So the idea of three doves coming around and holding on. Anyway, that's that. Holding on to the spirits. And so this is the first time this has been shown. It's going to probably last.
Different than your three-dimensional pieces. It's a relief and it works very well. It has plenty of depth. How is it, ordinarily, does it stand or hang? It stands?
It's like this. And Mike McGeehan, who commissioned me to do this, and I said, Mike, I really don't do commissions, but he was the skating coach at Dartmouth, and he said, I have this beautiful young lady who's winning all these national awards. Won't you come and try and do it? So I went in, and there's poor Emily, and I said, hold it, Emily, hold it, let me take your picture. So I took a couple pictures of her, and then I thought, how on earth can I do this? I can't do it freestanding because everything's going to break off. So I thought to encase it in a relief would be the best. And this beautiful piece from Loveland, California again, I did it out of that.
Winkie, when you get your stones in your pieces in Colorado and other places, are there special stores and things? I mean, I don't know.
Yes, there's stone stores.
Yeah?
And then you take your chisel and you bang on the rock, and if it has a nice high ping to it like a good champagne glass, it's good. If it goes thud, that means there's a crack in it.
Oh. And so do you choose stones for your students, or do they know how to now, too?
Well, I get a load from Colorado, which I just did, 800 pounds worth. And they're all on the floor in there, and then when they come in, after they sort of get an idea of what they might want to do and not force it into the stone, it has to be there, looking from the top down. Then they choose a stone and get to work. Luckily, most of them choose the little pieces that you saw in there. Some other people get too ambitious.
Well, Dick Saunders is getting bigger and Everett.
Oh, he's
Many of them.
way beyond it. He's just wonderful.
It's amazing to see the progress of people in this work that you're teaching?
Well, I don't teach those guys anymore. We just talk and discuss things. And
Well, you're
now-
colleagues now, and that's just
Yeah.
as
Yes,
important.
yes, there are 5 of us together.
Well, the title of this piece is called The Unemployment Line 09. These I find in the desert. They're called double claws. They fascinate me. They look like little people, little arms stretched out, just always reaching, and they're also these are dead ones. These are decayed things that they were alive last summer out there. And they all are very similar, but they're all completely different, just like we are. And initially my plan was to drill the stone this way and put them in this way, and I decided, with a suggestion of another person that helps me with sculpture, that she thought we ought to make this as precarious as possible, just like unemployment really is. And it was an idea I was working on, and it was started with that job fair they had in New Hampshire, in which like 10,000 people showed up and got turned away from. And
Oh, gosh.
I finished it the day they did the job fair. Wow. That was how I spent my afternoon, the day that the unemployed were being turned away from an unemployment fair.
So the title is Unemployment Line
09.
09.
And it represents what happened here in New Hampshire the day they tried to have an unemployment fair. And it was a complete, I mean, I wouldn't say disaster, but I've talked to people that, drove a long way and took a bus.
And didn't get much.
And walked into a situation where they were just told, sorry.
There's nothing.
No, there's no room for you. There's too many of you, so you have to leave. So,
That's a very important piece, and
Here again, I get very emotional when human beings are being tortured, sacrificed, killed. There was a movie called The Hat of the Killing Fields in Cambodia, where the journalist didn't have a passport to get out of the country. And he had to stay there, and he had to throw away his glasses because all the intellectuals were being murdered if you had glasses by these young 15, 16-year-old kids with guns. So they're in the rice fields, and in order to get away, he threw his hat into the rice field, and they thought he drowned for some reason, because it's all monkey and ducky. And he escaped, and this is the evil eye of communism, and here's the snake, the poisonous snake. But then on the other side, we have a mother bird alert and a baby bird scared to death because here is a snake. And so that luckily was an absolutely beautiful piece of orange translucent alabaster. And that comes from the Badlands, from Indian lands, the only place they can mine it now. It's gorgeous stone.
And one of the things you mentioned was that children understand it.
The children understand this completely. The adults don't get it at all.
It's so interesting. It's very interesting. It just shows how a catalog can't tell you what you're looking at. And thank goodness we have a camera that can eventually show the 3 dimensions of this beautiful piece. I had no idea that there was this wonderful fullness at the top, this cradling of
Nothing.
yeah.
Going to Africa is heartbreaking also. And this particular piece means that she's empty. She has contracted AIDS. So this is a woman sort of wanting to be able to have children and can't. So all these have stories. And not always very pleasant,
But it's interesting how you can tell very disturbing stories and the form can be so beautiful.
Yeah.
And then if we contemplate and pay attention, we're moved beyond just looking at a beautiful shape.
Well,
Your
you're
work
very
is good that way.
kind.
Well,
Thank
that's
you
the way
for
your work
doing this.
is.
Thank you.
But having this discussion with you makes me aware that we should remind viewers who come to look at all work, not just this work, enjoy the form, the skill, the talent, but then really, really pay attention to what things mean, especially in work like this. This is not minimalist work that's just about a shape. It's
Yeah.
really gorgeous, but
You definitely see your emotions in all these pieces.
Thank you. Everybody come back and enjoy AVA and everything else that's here. It's just a wonderful place to work. Absolutely wonderful.
And this
thank you.
gallery is great for this show. Thank
Yeah.
goodness we have this space. Thank you.